you hear that there's an Edge of Tomorrow 2 in development now? This week's show, which is our interview format. You can wear...
Can you actually wear the Parasite helmet?
You can't wear the Parasite helmet,
okay.
But you can wear the Marine helmet, and you can wear the Jimmy hat, and you can wear that's not the appropriate term for it. Or you,
yeah, that's
yeah, we're just like Microsoft and Google.
That's not what I meant.
Hi, I'm Will Weisbaum. I'm the Associate Narrative Director here for Squadron 42 and Star Citizen projects.
I'm Dave Haddock. I'm the Narrative Director here at Cloud Imperium.
You're one of the first 5 or 6 people who joined the company. You're up there. It's just Chris, Sandy, Ortwin. How did you connect with Chris Roberts and CIG?
My background was in film. Intern at Chris's production company in LA. I kind of met Chris through that. I ended up working on a movie he was producing called Outlander. Kept in sporadic touch, but I was off doing other stuff. Chris basically reached out to me, and so I went over to his house. I got to fly in a Hornet, and I crashed into the Bengal a couple of times. He asked if I wanted to come on board, so we started building the lore and the fiction. It was 900 years of history, so it was like, what are the main kind of landmarks?
You met Chris before Star Citizen. What was he like? What was your impression of Chris when you first met him? And remember, you have tenure, so you can't be fired.
Well, I mean, the irony was that I played Wing Commander growing up, and actually sold Wing Commander 2 and 3 when I worked at Babbage's in high school. So that was why when I saw the job posting at his production company, I was like, oh, cool. Like I knew his games going into it. But it was cool. I mean, again, it was an office, so it was like, I was working front desk and reading scripts and, getting coffee and, doing the usual stuff. But yeah, it was a cool dynamic. It was like I said, Adam Weezer with the company was there at the time, and John Schimmel was president of production there and stuff like that. So it was a really fun group of people, and had a blast there.
I'm sure if you asked 100 Star Citizens, you get 95 different answers about what Star Citizen is supposed to be.
I do know Dave ate at the same restaurant every day before I came on board.
That is. Will, how did you get hooked up with the project?
I was actually, previously I'd been working at Sony Santa Monica.
You're allowed to say what it was?
No.
Okay. Tell me later.
I mean, previously I'd been working on the God of War titles, but they were trying to develop a new IP. I hadn't even planned to go to the Cloud Imperium booth because they weren't hiring narrative, and I was just having a soda at a table, and I started chatting with someone, and they were like, oh, we might be looking for writers soon. You should give me your information. And so ended up talking to Dave and John, and we ended up clicking really well. Time in our smaller office in Santa Monica, I would be sitting on like a little chair like this with my laptop on my keyboard with Dave and John in the office.
Well, the
first things that I got a chance to write on was the commercial for the M50, kind of how the idea of Jax came about.
Yeah, it was the first Galactic Gear.
Yeah, of
Jax
like,
theory.
yeah.
So who created Jax? Yeah.
So totally original idea, not based on anything.
Legally distinct.
Functioning crew that you could just place these little vignettes and moments scattered around the ship of just people being people.
And we don't force it on. Hopefully the players, if they're not interested in diving deeper into the narrative, then they can just run past it, and it's fine.
There are going to be those streamers when the time comes who's just like straight line, doesn't interact with anything, just goes from one mission to the next mission, just fight, finish.
Well, and I also like the fact that we accommodate for that.
Later in 2015, the Persistent Universe launches with the Stanton system, realizing Stanton is essentially the vertical slice of everything in the PU. Terra is locked down and pristine and paradise or whatever, but Stanton allows for just about every single gameplay loop that Star Citizen will ever have. Talk to me about having to make lore design backgrounds for 100 star systems. Was that just a really busy afternoon?
That we tend to cast a wide net, and then we hone the parts that need honing and polishing. Pyro was like a really big learning experience when we brought it to life, because we had this idea of, I think some people remember from the original Galactic Guides, a much harsher Barren,
Barren,
inhospitable world. And that was also coming back from a lot of our early nuggets of planning where there weren't going to be that many planets to touch down. We wanted reasons to make stuff don't go zones because we didn't think we could handle it. So it was all blocked off. But then coming in, it's like, no, we want players to be able to explore more of these planets. We're building these planets, let's get them down there. And then it's like, well, if everything is super uncomfortable and inhospitable, then it doesn't make sense to have outposts there, and then we don't have the gameplay that we want. So it's like, all right, maybe some of the continents are inhospitable. Maybe one of the planets is closed off, but then let's open up the other ones and have them be much bigger play spaces. And I think that's the Pyro that you're seeing today.
And how boring would it be if you hired into a company and like, no, we set everything we were ever going to do back in 2012, and there's no room for innovation. There's no room for creativity. There's no room for ideation. Any of that.
Central star of it was a kind of a fluctuating, pulsating solar flare. So it wasn't ideal for habitation.
There's been repeated gold rushes throughout its history as new jump points have been discovered, as new technology has allowed them to access more of the system's resources.
As they discover more jump points, there's a jump point to Nyx, there's a jump point to Castra, I don't remember all the others. Terra, yeah, like this. It's like,
should the UE take over the system and make it safer? Because it's having consequences in the form of Xenothreat coming into Stanton and really messing stuff up.
and there's several gangs in Pyro system. Next week's ISC is Fire, but on the week after that, we're gonna meet a bit of the citizens for Prosperity and the Headhunter. So after Fire, we'll meet the citizens of Prosperity and the Headhunters there. So I don't want to go into too much of it here, but the Rough and Ready, we met them officially. We've had little peeks to them. We met them officially.
Just fictionally, we had outlined Xenothreat, Fire Rats, Darkside Rovers, Hollow Boys, the who are the Vigilantes?
Overlords.
Overlords.
I helped with that one.
Gravola, I think.
You're doing great.
Thank you.
Got more than me.
And then there was I think it was like the Lost Ones or something like that. It was like a human trafficking or sentient trafficking group that everyone hated.
That about does it for this week's Star Citizen Live. Thank you for taking the time to sit here and watch us and hang out with two very dear friends, or at least one dear friend in Dave. It was nice about Alex, and that was like all the nice I had left. Next week's ISC is Fire, which we haven't talked about in a while. I think we went cool on it.
Yeah.
But now we're back talking about Fire as it's...
things are really heating up.
Yeah, things are heating. Thank you, Will. For the upcoming Alpha 4.0, check that out. Next Friday, we've got Assistant Design Director Rick Porter and Ed Fuller on. They're going to take your questions. You remember the Jump Point episode we did for episode 500? We're going to take your questions about Jump Point and space-based gameplay and stuff like that. So a follow-up of last week's show, or this week's show, and the one 2 weeks ago. So you can look for a thread up on Spectrum that usually goes up on Monday. So you can submit your questions. That's a standard Q&A episode where you'll be able to ask them all those questions about jump points and stuff. You will have to contact the ATC first before you can submit your question.
Thankfully, no one had any narrative questions about jump points, so we didn't have to talk about that.
Thanks for watching. I'm Jared. See you next week, everybody. Bye.